What if the key to understanding markets isn't just better data, but better questions? In this episode, we dive into the world of foundational AI with Ye Tian, the founder of Theia Insights. From working on Alexa to lecturing on natural language processing and now decoding global markets with dynamic theme driven models, Ye brings a rare blend of technical depth and entrepreneurship. Theia Insights is rebuilding the scaffolding of thematic investing, from how we classify companies to how we construct portfolios. If you've ever wondered whether Tesla is a car company or an energy company or an AI company, well, this episode is for you. Welcome to the next big thing. I'm Mobeen Tahir, Director of Macroeconomics and Thematic Research at Wisdom Tree. And today I am delighted to be joined by my colleague, fellow researcher, and thematic investing enthusiast, Elvira Kuramshina, Associate Director of Quantitative Research here at Wisdom Tree in Europe. With that, welcome everyone. Let's kick things off. We have a lot of exciting things to talk about. Ye, you have quite a resume where in the past you've worked on Alexa, you've developed video games, you're a university lecturer, and now you've founded your own company. What I was noticing and I felt was that there's a common thread. And the common thread is you have the technical acumen, but you also have a creative spirit. Tell us a little bit about your career journey and what all you've done that has brought you to where you are today.
Thank you for having me. It's a great honor, and thank you to be with two brilliant minds on a sunny day in the UK. So my background, it's interesting to see kind of you seeing a common thread. So I have a technical background, so I did a master's and PhD in from computational linguistics to NLP here in the UK in London, and then did a postdoc in natural language processing. So I was academic, kind of doing research deep into kind of human language processing, machine language processing for quite some time. And then I was a scientist at Amazon Alexa, working especially on like the knowledge graph, like basically kind of what's the knowledge of the human world and how would you surface that through Alexa at the time. And then I have this kind of urge to create things, to make things, and that's where I created some games. They're actually board games, so they are like quite opposite to like technology. They are very tactile. And what drove me to start Theia is it's like a combination of my previous work in language and then in Alexa, kind of looking at human language information, so like Alexa knowledge graph, and see that this is it's a time where AI and financial services and economics is at a good intersection where we need a better map of the economy, and the previous map, like the traditional code, doesn't represent what companies do in the truest sense anymore. So that's the question that drove me, and I can kind of bring my experience from academia research and experience at Alexa to solve this problem, which is in essence kind of similar problem, just specifically about what exists in the economy and who are the players. That's my background.
Yeah, I think it's always interesting actually to see what made people pursue a career in a certain field. So obviously your career journey is very closely intertwined with AI. Do you remember your first interaction with the technology? What was your first memory? And basically, what is your motivation? What made you pursue career in this field?
So I think my first fascination with AI was actually through language. So kind of how do you model language? What's meaning? Because like back in the day, so before 2000s and like there's not a very good representation about meaning. Initially, kind of meaning in language was symbolically written. So like at the time, a lot of systems were translating natural language into symbolic language and use that to do reasoning and to do systems. So in the like 2000s, and then like around 2013 is when word2vec become the first embedding based system to represent meaning. And here the kind of the philosophical side is quite intuitive. The idea that the meaning is in the context that surrounds you. So like, for example, Mobeen, what's Mobeen? Mobeen is everything except for Mobeen, everything that interacts with Mobeen, every person, everything that you do, everything except Mobeen equals Mobeen, right? To represent Mobeen is the universe minus Mobeen. And in a similar way, language in this way, you can say, okay, what's a dog? That's really hard to describe. Okay, don't worry about dog, just everything that's not dog. So every word and every phrase, every sentence is represented by the context around it. So from the beginning of word2vec, which is you simply count the words that co-appear with dog, and that matrix of counting what does dog co-occur with become the meaning of dog, to all the way to now transformer models, which are much, much more sophisticated, but essentially the same idea that you represent the meaning of everything with everything that's not that thing. And that the contextual representation becomes the model of language. And it's very good because it's a matrix representation that you can compute, you can scale up. And so that was my entry point, kind of from language to AI.
That's a fascinating story and very interesting perspective that you shared with us. I was very impressed that you're also a lecturer in NLP. And I remember, like being a student myself, and I think especially for those courses which are elective courses, the first lecture, I think, a very important one. And lecturers definitely have a certain responsibility in terms of like making students interested in the topic, right, and in the area. So what do you usually say to students in your first lecture, and basically how do you make them interested in NLP?
Yeah, and that depends on when that question was, right? So before large language model, it was more about kind of imagine, like actually looking at the magic of human language processing is pretty miraculous. Like I am producing some sound wave, and to you now it's meaning in your head, and that it represents, and then you created a thought, and that becomes sound wave, and that to me in my brain becomes meaning. That's pretty miraculous. How does that happen? So the old version of NLP guys actually go through each step, go through phonological and phonetics representation. So like speech to text, ASR. So changing sound wave into text, and then it goes through the whole process of traditional kind of linguistic analysis, that you break them into words. You look at the structure, so you actually analyze the syntax structure of a sentence. What's the subject? What's the object? And then you do a semantic representation. Okay, so like if you say it's as a direction to say retrieve me a company that matches this, that then you translate that semantically into logical language, and then you can interface with machine. So kind of like to externalize all the things that you do naturally as a human without thinking into something step by step. But after large language model, it's interesting, like it's almost like all of that ability become internal again, that we don't really know how large language model does all of that steps from breaking into words to understanding structure to understanding like co-connection, and be able to produce something that's coherent, that becomes more like a human experience. The language model just does something we do without explicitly being aware of how it's done. So these days, I think it's more the kind of magic of understanding, almost like poking a brain, because we can poke that brain, of how does that happen, all of that steps inside a model. That's more interesting. Back then it's more kind of breaking it down into the steps of look at all the things that you've done without even thinking. That's more interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating how you mention your own journey, and Elvira asked you about when you started thinking about AI, and you were thinking about language and meaning, and of course you've been thinking about this for quite some time. I was intrigued when I saw your profile and noticed that you founded Theia Insights at the start of 2022. And even I think that stood out, that date stood out to me, because as far as the rest of the world is concerned, November 2022 was, of course, a very important turning point. ChatGPT comes out. Everyone is now paying attention to AI. This is the next big thing. And suddenly, this technology, which was being talked about by only the smart people that were developing it, now everyone is engaging with it. Now everyone is interacting with it. But you saw something before that hype really took the world by storm in November 2022. You saw something before that that compelled you to start a company which is a deep tech company, and it has AI at the core of its business model. So, what did you see, and what motivated you to start this company in this space, Theia Insights?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So what I saw, a couple of things. One is the just encountering the problem or the challenge of understanding what exists in the economy and who are the players, who does what by how much, and I realizing that this question needs to be answered in a better way, or in a more modern way that co-develop, co-evolve with the economy. So realizing that problem is one thing, and then the other is the intersection between readiness of technology. So transformer model, which is the current, like all the large language models, how it's based on, that paper came out 2018, so that's 5 years before, and it wasn't at the scale, of course, anywhere near, because of hardware constraints. So, and then during that time, or before 2018, there's already a lot of maturity in the vision model side. Like there's a lot of face recognition, all of like foundational models from the vision side that went from research to commercialization. And you see that matured very quickly. On the NLP side, we started to see the real power from transformer, or actually kind of this more contextualized language models. So before transformer, there was a bidirectional LSTM models that are already pretty good, but not as good as transformer, and especially not as fast. And what made that fast, and which then enables commercialization, is because of also GPUs, right? GPUs may become more efficient, and that transformer is an architecture that you can parallelize on GPUs. But LSTM, so that's long short-term memory, the model, that one you can't really parallelize. So the combination of hardware advancement in GPU and the architecture of transformer means that suddenly you can do something that previously take a couple of seconds now in a couple of milliseconds, and you're able to scale up much more. So that intersection make NLP as a foundational model kind of reach the point of like that inflection point, like vision model. And you just see that suddenly you can do so much more than before, that you now, because come back to the question of answering, have an accurate map of the economy. What's limiting that is that you couldn't read everything because it just takes too long. That's why the previous version built on humans don't have the ability to read everything, and therefore not have a holistic, that's dynamic view. But now that the intersection of GPU advancement and transformer models at scale allows us to read everything, suddenly we are able to solve the problem that we are previously not able to solve.
I really like what the terms that you use, building a map of the economy and understanding who does what, because from our perspective at Wisdom Tree, we are in the business of building exchange traded funds and indices, and we know that how you classify any company into different categories is what ultimately determines where the money actually goes. So when investments are made, that classification makes a big difference. And traditionally, we have had systems like the Global Industry Classification Standard, the GICS system. But you've built something, and of course, we have a suite of solutions that you've built that we would like to explore. And one of the things you've built is this dynamic industry classification model. I think that's the term dynamic is quite operative here, because that sets it apart from what we might have currently. Tell us about this model and why it's so important, and what it offers to your customers?
Yes. So the GIGS code, right, that was built in the 1990s, and it's a very good system, very systematic, and it says exactly what it does, which is that you look at each company, you look at its revenue, and you determine what's the majority of the revenue belongs to in terms of industry. So that's what it does, and it doesn't claim to do anything, that doesn't do. So now, if you think about the economy of today, and the other aspect of gigs is that the taxonomy is annually reviewed by a human. Like if there's anything that they want to change, it's an annually review. But fast forward a few decades now, couple of things that we've all experienced, that the economy is becoming more interconnected, and technologies, there are more of it. So we see things changing very quickly. There's new technologies that become a commercial reality very quickly. So the taxonomy itself needs to self-learn. So if anything pop up in the economy, so for example, recently, one of the things that we saw is like the commercialization intersection between psychedelics and mental health treatment, and they are entering phase 3 trials and becoming kind of very close to commercial reality. So when new things emerge, the taxonomy should be able to pick that up. And the second aspect is, how do you answer the questions of what companies do? Maybe in the past, it was about where is the revenue coming from? But looking now, right, like you said, is Tesla a auto company? Yes, but it's also a solar energy company. It also has exposure to robotics and AI. And companies that, like things that are maybe not so obvious, like Palantir. Palantir, by traditional standard, is software. It is software, but it has quite a significant amount of exposure to defense industry. And things like American Express, it is a credit card company, it's a financial company, but it has exposure specifically in the hospitality and travel industry. So then, to answer the question of what does company do, we should then perhaps look beyond what's the majority of the revenue is coming from, but look at a whole holistic view of business activity. From it is, revenue driver, its product and services, but also its strategic investment in its research, in its strategic partnerships, like with Amex, and the use cases that it's serving. And this is the aim of the Theia industry classification, is to have a taxonomy that's dynamic, that reveals the emerging themes, and also to have a more holistic view to measuring by how much is the business activity exposed to different themes and industries.
Yeah, I think you're exactly hitting the nail on its head with this dynamic classification, basically allowing investors, to solve this pain point of seeing how the companies are evolving, with technologies, with the world, and how the revenue stream is also basically changing. But let's also talk about another pioneering solution that Theia brings to the table, and this is thematic factors. So if we think about factor models have become, long ago already a staple in investing, while thematic factors are actually a new kid on the block. So how would you explain what thematic factors are, how they are built differently, in comparison to well-established factors, and how exactly clients can use this solution?
Thanks for pointing that out. So factor model, right? Just for the audience, if we were to describe what a factor model is, use analogy. It's like, let's say if we are in a restaurant and then we are having conversations and a lot of background noise, and then if you were to record the sound wave, which looked like a stock price movement, let's say, then that sound wave includes so much things, including your voice, Mobeen's voice, my voice, background music, and car outside. So the idea for a factor model is to tease that one sound wave into each of our voices and the background. So in a financial market, if we imagine the stock price of a single company to a whole portfolio, that stock price is moved by so many things. Part of that is the general market. Some of that is style of the company, the size, the momentum, and so on. And then there's what are the industries that are moving those peaks and troughs. And so the factor model try to tease that apart. So the traditional factor model have based on research also, in 1980s and 90s, where there are things that we know, like the market and style, like size and conservativity and so on. Those we know that they have a significant impact on the stock price. And then the industry factors were built upon the view of Gibbs code at the time, where is that there are a few industry sectors and each company are only they belong to one industry, and so it's built like that. When you do the cross-sectional regression from the Barra methodology, you assign one company to one industry. So that starting point, of course, brings some distortion. That, like, let's say if you classify Amazon as a consumer discretionary company, then how do you capture Amazon's contribution to the cloud computing industry and so on, right? So a key differentiation is that because industry classification is an input to factor model, so we bring a one-to-many mapping. So we already know, so the system knows that Amazon has contribution to cloud computing as well as e-commerce and so on and so forth. And based on that key differentiation, and then it does require a new mathematical algorithm to be able to tease that part out. But essentially, that's what we do. So we try to retrieve the pure signal that is cloud computing, the voice of cloud computing, if you will. And that represents the pure return, how cloud computing industry is moving. And then if you look at from a single stock and portfolio point of view, you can see what is my true sensitivity as a stock or portfolio to cloud computing versus data center versus, and what's left over is idiosyncratic to myself. So that's what we try to answer.
And that's very, very interesting. Obviously, there are so many use cases how thematic factors, like could be used by investors, performance attribution, right? Risk management, risk attribution could be one of those avenues. But in addition to thematic factors, another interesting solution that you have is concept to universe. And I definitely see how investors can use industry and thematic classification that you're offering, and also thematic factors to build thematic baskets. And when it comes to building thematic baskets, obviously it's very important how you design your strategy and how do you want to capture basically that exposure? Because one thing that we observe at WisdomTree also in our thematic research is that in certain themes, dispersion in returns is quite high. And in general, basically, the dispersion in returns is substantial when you're looking across the themes. So how do you see basically clients using concept to universe, and where do you see the biggest value there in using their solutions?
So concept to universe, the name is named concept to universe rather than concept to basket with a particular reason, is because you want the universe, right? So the key here is, as like what human were hard to do for human, is to see the whole and not have any blind spots. So I suppose like a starting point from thematic investing, like you said, there are so many particular strategies and thinking and understanding of single stock. But the starting point is, what is the universe from which I'm selecting from? And having that universe that are whole and doesn't, so it's complete, but also it's a living one that dynamically updates with the economy, with the market. It's important. And that is something that traditionally is very hard to do, because how do you know what you don't know? So you can take a long time to get all the codes together and read everything and try to make sure you capture everything. So that's what we try to do, is to make that process, the universe part, give you a holistic view of what's the landscape of that concept. And that concept could be very simple, like weight loss treatment, or it could be very holistic, like the economy of longevity for connectivity, or something that are more view of the future. And you want to know all the aspects. What are all the aspects that contribute to this new way of new economy? And so the model, what it does is that it takes your description of whether it's a very narrow description or very broad one, and find all the relevant major and sub micro themes in our taxonomy. So if, let's say, if you're health provider, or like if you're interested in health, you would be able to see psychedelics for mental health that wasn't there before in the past. So you can discover new themes that exist, and then find all the relevant players, what are companies, how much they're relevant, and by how much, and why they're relevant. And from there, that potentially that serves as a living benchmark. That is one of the challenges, right? And then from the other point of view, that is where from there you can really apply the intelligence of a fund manager, use your own intelligence, your own understanding to express your view, your financial view, your strategy for investment, knowing that this is a holistic starting point.
I really liked the examples you gave, Yi, in terms of you mentioned American Express being a credit card company, but also being in the hospitality industry. Tesla operates in multiple realms. Palantir, of course, a software company, but also very much exposed to the defense sector. Uh, Now, just operationally, I'm curious if in the past, let's say going back to a world where everyone was reading financial statements and company reports, which are in the hundreds of pages, you want to gather, okay, how much is the revenue exposure? But you also mentioned it's not just about the revenue exposure, it's about the strategy, it's about what the company wants to do, is trying to do, where it's investing. All of those things paint a picture of what the company does and how do you actually classify it into all of these different buckets. uh, I'm just curious, how do you do it, like practically? It seems like of course no one's sitting there reading, going through hundreds of pages of reports company by company. You're obviously using various technological tools to do that, but we've been talking about models. So ultimately what we're trying to do is do some sort of quantifying of all the information that is out there. So just walk us through practically what it means to look at all the companies out there and distill all the relevant information and create a usable data set that can go into these models and give a usable output.
Mm-hmm. So kind of in a condensed form. So it starts from reading everything. Of course, the model reads everything. So it starts from companies' earnings, annual earnings, quarter earnings, and filings. I mean filings and earnings transcripts, AGMs, financial statements, all of the company documents. So if if it's not English, we translate that into English. So start from everything English, but we cover global companies, and then the first thing we do is like from the hundreds of pages of a filing, you want to find sections where they talk about business activity. So that means that we have a structured categories of extraction, that if it mention anything to do with products, services, technologies, R&D, strategic partnerships, use cases, and there's a few other categories. If any paragraph talks about that, that paragraph is kept. If it's something that's purely, let's say, their internal HR solutions and so on, then that's put aside, so that we make sure we only look at things that talk about what companies do. And then from there, we do this structured extraction. So we extract actual phrases that are tagged as that is a product, that is a technology, that is a use case, that is a partnership. So there will be millions of phrases, but also each with a relationship of what it is, the relationship between the thing that you extracted and the company. And from there, we actually, that's where the taxonomy actually comes from. So if we extract that and we go back 12 years, the millions of phrases represent everything that happened in the economy, in the market, in the public market, right? And then we go through a hierarchical clustering of all these millions of phrases, both by semantic distance, by how similar they mean, but also a network connection kind of clustering between companies and products and companies and phrases. And that lends the 3,000 micro themes that are in our economy, in our taxonomy at the moment. And that, of course, is regularly updated. So there we first surface what are the themes that exist, and the 3,000 micro themes cluster itself up to about 200 major themes. And then we have top 3 levels of the taxonomy that is more stable. So sub-industries, industries, and sectors, which are 10. And then to calculate for each company, let's say how much of Amazon is cloud computing versus e-commerce and so on, we use a bottom-up and top-down signal. So a bottom-up signal is all of those raw phrases that we already extracted, but we also know what they are, whether it's a product, whether it's a technology. So then each phrase is mapped onto a most related micro theme or a major theme. So then you already from a keyword count, but that keyword is already contextualized, right? You have a measurement of how much is cloud computing related keywords talked about. But that's not enough because just because it's talked out loud doesn't mean it has a significant importance. So the other way is the top-down signal of the overall summary of structured understanding of what is the company's key revenue drivers, products and services and technologies, and all of that thing that we mentioned in the beginning, that structure. So then each theme, then it's also evaluated at the importance to the company's overall value. So just give a concrete example. In 2023, McDonald's filing, after the first classification of all the paragraphs that are relevant to company business activity, hamburger is only appeared once. But environmental materials, like mentioned, more than 20 times. But however, we know, the models know that hamburger is a key product that is a key product within its services of fast food restaurants. And so hamburger, even though it's appeared once, that importance is lifted up so that the percentages go up. And environment, so in terms of environmental boxes and the packaging and so on, goes down because it's not a key product or service. So these two signal is weighted, have a weighted average from bottom-up signal and top-down signal that becomes the final percentage of what percentage of a company is relevant to each thing. Hope that's clear.
It's very, very clear and very interesting because what I hear, bottom-up signals, top-down signals, extracting keywords from company reports, all seems like a very robust, very scientific, if I may say, approach to this whole process. In the world of thematic investing, and maybe investing in general, some people argue that there's more art than science, or maybe there's a mix of the two. You can't always be absolutely scientific about everything. And I know with your background, with your creative background, and you have an appreciation for the artistic side of things as well. I'm curious how you see it. Do you see this whole process of identifying and classifying companies as entirely a scientific exercise, or do you see some element of judgment, some element of an artistic approach to this as well? Where do you see this approach that you have taken on that spectrum of whether it is a science or whether it is an art?
Yeah, so maybe like just bringing like something along the outside, like kind of fun. If we that's a philosophical question of what is truth, what's real, right? And in a way, truth is I think of that as a statistical agreement, because the fact that, let's say, it's true that Amazon has cloud computing business is that everybody agree from all the evidence that they can see that they have cloud computing business. And so really what we try to surface is not to claim my method is true or that method is true, is to bring different perspectives and make that perspective as whole as possible. And different perspectives always bring a different signal. And to see the deltas between the perspective itself give interesting information. And so we try to capture company documents, and according to company documents, from a bottom up and top down understanding, what do company do according to what companies say. But that is just one perspective, and that's why thematic fact model provides another perspective, is how do investments see this, because that's translated into their behavior. And there can be very well be other perspective, and one of the perspective is to look at what the company's patents say. But company patents say are very different to what companies do, and you might not want to mix that. And instead you might want to say, look at, according to what the company patents, they are focusing on these areas, but according to company filings, they're focusing on these areas. And I think the role of AI is to, because what human can't do is we don't have the time to read everything, but AI can read everything, but present you this holistic and truthful, meaning that you just be truth to the source. What is the perspective that I'm providing, and be clear about that, right? Then humans can make a judgment about, okay, companies say this, the market thinks this. This is where human intelligence comes from. Why is there a discrepancy between what the market thinks and what the company is saying? So this is how I see this kind of philosophically, and then like practically speaking, is to be clear about, this is the perspective that I'm bringing to you systematically, and it's one source of truth. And to have your holistic truth, you can combine and compare different perspectives and then bring your own intelligence.
It's very interesting, basically, how you are explaining how AI and technology, right, are powering solutions that Theia brings to market. So when it comes to AI, obviously, we are living in the world which is increasingly being shaped by technology. There are different forecasts in terms of what AI can transform in the next 5 to 10 years. When it comes actually to yourself, how do you see AI transforming the investment landscape, and which role do you think thematic investing will play in that?
I think AI can help bring thematic investing to be more accessible to more people. I think what was difficult for people, everyday people, to understand thematic investing is that in the past, it's so far away because all the data is hidden, and it's basically impossible for an individual to understand what are the industries and what's existing, and people don't understand where their pension fund, where the attribution of that, where did my pension fund go, kind of. It's a world that's more guarded. But now with AI, and people can talk to ChatGPT, they have access to these things, and then I think there's more bridge between understanding what is out there and then how do people bridge what they are personally passionate about or they have conviction in with investment products that align with their worldview. I think that maybe is the bridge. And for example, if people have a conviction in, I believe the future is blockchain, is distributed based, like they have a lot of conviction in blockchain technology, then they can find products that are most aligned with their view, both because they are able to now compare all of the products and also be able to know what is the actual advancement in blockchain technology, whereas past is harder. So that's my view. And I don't know whether you feel similarly as well.
No, absolutely. I think that's also the beauty of thematic investing, that by basically investing in a certain theme, investors can also express their beliefs and also support, like a certain technology that they might like or that they believe will transform the world in the years to come. So going back actually to 2022, right, with the starts of the release of ChatGPT, it was very clear that 2023 was shaped by large language models. And then in 2024, obviously, we saw the proliferation of multimodal models. Now in 2025, agentic AI is one of the key buzzwords when it comes to the AI landscape. And you mentioned that Theia's solution are exactly basically allowing you to see different emerging trends when it comes to thematic landscape and also different, like technological trends. What are the developments specifically within AI that you are especially excited about, and maybe certain developments that make you feel as if it's the start of a new era?
I think technologically, so there are things that are incremental improvement that can allow use cases that are significantly better than before. So one of the areas is memory, right? So like one of the frustrations we had back in 2022 is every time you talk to it, it's like it has it's goldfish memory. It doesn't know anything. I have to keep talking about the same thing. And then to have that memory is like someone who truly knows you. That's very important for, for good experience. And that used to be, there's a constraint about context windows. Context window went many, many times larger in the last 5 years. And to be able to have a holistic memory and be able to update that memory according to your interaction with that, that's going to really change the kind of the interaction between humans and AI. And recently there's these models like so they use a diffusion model, like instead of the traditional autoregressive language model, but using a diffusion architecture. The idea for diffusion architecture for language is that diffusion used to mostly be used for image generation and image models, where in an autoregressive model, like we have now, you generate token by token, where you just generate the next word basically. Whereas diffusion model, they start by a noisy landscape. So kind of like instead of saying one word, they say a whole paragraph, but just gibberish. And then from that whole paragraph gibberish, it fine-tunes the whole thing into something that is clear and makes sense. Just like in image models, they generate like just noise, and that noise become an image. So I don't know personally whether that's have big potentials, but the architecture itself is interesting because it allows faster and more efficient generation than before. So, and then potentially that could also allow more creativity, but all internal cohesion, because it's not generated one word at a time, but generated as a whole thing in one go. It's interesting. It's something maybe interesting to watch. But personally, what I find most interesting and exciting is still the combination of human and AI, to have this almost like more holistic awareness. Because again, what is the no living humans ever done is to have read everything and remember everything. Nobody's ever done that. So now there is someone who's done that, is AI. So what are all the hidden connections that we didn't know? That if AI is human are able to be equipped with this holistic view, how will our decisions be different if we see everything? And not just if we see everything, but everyone can see everything. So I think that combination of providing that calm, holistic view to feed into our human desires and human emotions and our drive, that's an exciting area for me.
I like that idea of human plus AI being a stronger combination than human on its own, or AI on its own. And the other day I was doing some research on a topic, and I asked AI for some ideas. I was brainstorming some ideas on what sort of analysis I could do to support the research that I was doing. And I got some ideas, and then I explored a bit further, and I said, okay, what data would I need to do this analysis? What computations will I need to do? And AI kept going that one level up as we had that conversation. And eventually I said, okay, that's all good. Well, what formula will I need to take the data and actually plot the chart? And I got that answer as well. Now, of course, there are people like Elvira who are smart and capable of programming in multiple computer languages. But then there are people like me who can't code to save their life. And with AI, I still can't do what Elvira can do, but I can at least do more than what I was able to do without AI. And so it's certainly made me more technically capable. Uh, so I do like that take that you have as well. But uh, as a business owner, as we come to the close of our discussion, Ye, and it's been a fascinating discussion. As a business owner, I'm curious. Uh, with the sorts of things that you've highlighted, what's on the horizon on AI and so forth, as a business owner, what excites you? What are you looking forward to in the months and years ahead? Because of course the technology will change, but the way we do business will change as well. So what are you looking forward to, and what do you think is on the horizon?
Um, so from a like kind of like from the point of view of Thea, I want to like of course bring the technology to people's hands and really see how people can use it and how that from the user's perspective how that can improve the technology is a co-creation process. And from business in general, I hope to see that similar to what we talked about, like kind of how the future is evolving with AI and technology. With business as well, I think businesses will become much more capable of doing the things that a small team or a big team were not able to do before, because of we humans don't have that brain power to do all of that computation. So that enables business, I hope, to more in general, more focus on what they really truly want to bring as your unique value. Because ultimately, business is about you do what you do best, and that we exchange with each other because what I create that's uniquely to me bring you value, and you bring the value you bring the value that I don't bring. So and then that would become a environment that is less about competition and winning and losing, but more about each business, each individual bring the value that they truly align with their own gift and their own strength. And then that can organically fit. And the fitting and the organic attribution is where AI can help to really connect people and connect resources where they are truly aligned and most aligned. And I finally kind of see that's what finance is about. Finance is about resource attribution, is to bring the resource from the people who are aligned with the vision to the people who are building. That's what finance is, bring that resource attribution. And so I think that should, in the future, more drive from meaning, from alignment, from the areas that each person truly wants to create. Of course, that brings the financial return, but maybe financial return is not is not secondary, but it's just as important as building the world that each person wants to build.
And will we still be playing board games in the future, and will you still be making them?
Yes, because we are all about human interaction. It will become even more important when we have AI be able to do all of the processing. And then fundamentally, what brings connection is human interaction in a physical, tactile sense, I believe.
Excellent. Well, on that note, I have to thank Ye for your great insights, for joining us today, Elvira for joining us today as well. A great discussion, of course. For anyone interested in Theia Insights, you can visit theiainsights.com or follow Ye Tian on LinkedIn and so forth for all of her insights on social media. We thank you all for joining this episode of The Next Big Thing. Before we close, I do need to state the following to clarify: the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of Wisdom Tree and this episode, Theia Insights, and are subject to change. Anything we present in this podcast is not intended to be relied upon as a forecast research, nor as investment or tax advice. The information and opinions expressed in this podcast are not a recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any securities, and reliance upon them is at the sole discretion of the listener. Please remember, past performance is no indication of future results. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Next Big Thing. If you want to hear more from us, please subscribe on whichever platform you're using, and do take a moment to leave us a 5-star rating. You can follow us on social media, Wisdom Tree in Europe, on LinkedIn or X. And if you want to learn more about megatrends, visit Wisdom Tree's website. Join us again for another interesting topic next time. We'll see you then.